Today is the 4th of December 2016, and I thought I'd show you my weekend project here. Well, it's going to take longer than the weekend because I had to order some parts. This is a 90 centimeter commercial oven that we have in the kitchen that we love and use regularly, or have until recently. When I did the turkey recently, I realized that there was a problem with the oven. I've been suspicious of it for some time now, but it seems to have gotten worse over time, and finally I know what the reason is. If you're not really particularly interested in ovens, then you may not realize that how they work exactly. In old-fashioned regular electric ovens, you just turn the knob on and set the temperature, and the heat came on, and the heat is, there's lower heat and upper heat. And when you turned the oven on, both the lower heat and the upper heat came on, and that was the way it worked. And the idea is, of course, to give an even temperature throughout the oven. In more modern ovens, or an oven like this, you can control the upper heat and the lower heat individually. There's certain cooking processes where that would be an advantage. If you want to just brown food, for instance, you turn just on the upper heat. If you want to cook something from the bottom, like a pizza, for instance, it's good to have it to be able to control the lower heat. This oven also has, in addition, a grill, which most modern ovens have in the top here, that lets you grill food in the oven. And it also has a fan heat. The fan is in back. I don't know whether you can see it or not, but in any case, it's just a ring. Maybe I can drop the camera a little bit down. You can possibly, or maybe you can see it. Oh, you can see it there, yeah. It's this ring, heating ring here, and then a fan in the middle, and it blows heat around in the oven. This has a number of advantages. One thing, you don't even have to preheat the oven because it heats so quickly. It also has the advantage that it transfers the heat very quickly. However, there are many food cooking processes you would not want to use the fan because it would dry the food out. The fan doesn't sit open like that. There's a cover over it here. I've taken this opportunity to clean the oven because it needed it badly, and it's nice to be able to do it here because when it's in the kitchen, it's difficult to get down. Karen and I were able to lift this out onto this roll table here, which is an advantage because I can then turn it and move it from place to place. It weighs about 200 pounds, so it's not real easy to move around. We were just able to lift it out and get it onto the table. As I was saying, I had problems cooking the turkey this year. I set the temperature to 230 to a hot oven like I normally would to start the turkey, and I put it in, and then put the turkey in, and the temperature dropped down to, well, let's see, in Fahrenheit about 220 degrees, which is much too low. And it took forever to get back up. So I had to turn the fan on. When you turn the fan on, it heats it very quickly. But again, I didn't want to use the fan to cook the turkey because it will dry it out. I had to sit there throughout the 4 hours that I cooked the turkey, turning the fan on and off to try to keep the temperature relatively stable. So obviously something was seriously wrong with the oven. Like I say, I had suspicion that there has been a problem, and I think it had gotten worse over the years, and now I know why. What I determined after I finally let the oven cool down, and then I turned it back on, you can turn, for instance, in this position, this knob is in here, you can turn the upper heat and lower heat on at the same time, or if you turn it this way, it just turns the lower heat on. I set it to this setting here and then turn the temperature up to 200 degrees Celsius, 400 degrees Fahrenheit, and lo and behold, the bottom of the oven stayed cold. So obviously the lower heaters were not working. Well, I didn't know what this oven looked like, so I took it apart, and I found in the back, for instance, just a bunch of wiring. And this controls, for instance, the fan heater here. This is the fan that cools the oven, because you have to have, since it's built into a cabinet, you have to have a cooling fan as well. I couldn't find out where the lower heat was. And when I took this side off, then I began to realize what was going on. I found some connectors going down here in the bottom and some in the top here. And I looked on the other side, and the same ones are there, but they're all fastened together, whereas these are individual. This wire here is white or cream colored, and this wire here is red and white. So obviously this was going to something different than this. I checked the wiring where it came from. This is the switch for controlling the oven. And I realized then the heater for the bottom and the heater for the top, for that matter, is not a heating element like you'd normally think of, but are heating rods that go through. And with a little bit of fumbling and fooling around, I was able to, well, first, the next thing I have to say I did was measure the heating rods that are sitting down here in the bottom, and they were open. There was no measurable resistance, which means they were burned out, basically. So I have to turn this around again. So I realized the oven is made so that the heat comes from these. There are 4 of these heating rods in the bottom here. I've taken 3 of them out and left one of them so I could show you what it looks like. And then 3 up at the top here. There are 4 in the bottom, 3 at the top, which makes sense. I had trouble believing that all 4 of these rods were burned out. It seemed unlikely, but then I remembered 2 things. One thing, anyway, at the moment. I remembered that, in fact, it had gotten worse, and I think they probably didn't burn out all at once. They burned out one after another. After fooling around a little, I realized these rods are held in by metal tabs. So I bent the metal tab back and I pulled the rod out. And this is the actual heating rod. It draws 400 watts, so all 4 of them together are 1600 watts on the bottom, 3 on the top for another 1200 watts, which is what you'd expect for an oven this size. And I measured the resistance, of course, across these, and they're open. They're burned out. There's no measurable resistance. They're wide open. So I called the company, and after trying to explain what I needed, they sent me by email. Immediately sent me a diagram. And I was able to find these in the diagram and find out a number for them, and I told them what I needed. And they said, fine, they'll pack 4 of them up and send them off to me. I'll have them by Tuesday, and it costs $200, $50 a piece. Well, that's what you figure. Then I looked very closely at this, and I saw that there's a metal plate here with some stamping on it. And I looked at it, and I see that it was for 220 volts. And then it occurred to me what the situation was. This oven, I bought this oven on eBay. The new price of the oven is almost $5,000. The price I paid for it, I bid on it and got it for 330 euros. So I certainly can't complain about it. I've had it for 11 years. And it was already 10 years old when we got it. It was 10 years old when we got it, but it was brand new. It hadn't been used, or it had been used about a year, I guess, but it was in brand new condition. And I realized then it is so old that it was made before Germany went from 220 to 230 volts. In fact, our voltage, I measured our voltage yesterday again, and it's 235 to 237 volts. So these burned out because they were actually for the old 220 volt current in Germany, and they just got, well, after 20 years they burned out. Why the upper ones haven't burned out, I don't know. I know that I can replace them the same way if I need to. The only problem is, of course, I have to take the oven out again. But in any case, I've ordered these, and I'm going to get them on Tuesday, and then I just put them in like this. They have spade connectors on the end, so it's very simple to just push them on. Here you can see this is the side where they're all connected together, together with the top ones. I will just push them in and clamp them in place with these little bent metal tabs here. Put the connectors on and put all the metal back on. There's a lot of tin work that has to go on the thing, of course, to close it up again. And we should have an oven that's good for the rest of my cooking time in any case. Hello. What's the matter? What you looking for? A hat? Ah, okay. All right. So there you are. That's my project for this weekend. Cleaning it is more work, of course, than repairing it. Okay, that's it for now. I'll bring you back on Tuesday when I get the parts. Well, the heating elements did come on Tuesday, as they promised they would, but it's now Thursday. I haven't gotten around to working on this because there have been a number of other priorities. In any case, I checked again. I rechecked these upper heaters here, heating elements, to make sure that they're all okay, and they are. I had to disconnect them because to measure the resistance across each individual one. There we go. The ones that are on here that I checked these, they're 120 ohms each. The new ones are 125 ohms. That makes up for the difference of the 230 volts instead of 220 volts. So now we'll put those in, and they just, what they are it's just a metal holder here, and then in it is a filament or a heater, probably tungsten wire, that is a very fine coil. In fact, on one of these, I took one of these apart here so you can see it. There it is. I don't know if you're not going to be able to see this or not. It's very small. The connector, and then here. I don't know if you can see that or not. There's a very thin coil, goes all the way through from one end to the other, except in these it doesn't go through. It's broken somewhere in the middle, and it's sitting. The coil is sitting inside these beads. These are ceramic beads, like often used in heating elements of all kinds. Yeah, I'm in the field there. That's all there is to it. They have, like I say, these had a resistance of 120 ohms, and they heat the bottom of the oven, and the three at the top here heat the top. So we can now put the new ones in. I'm going to put the label part here on the other end there, where they're all on the same side.
So that's all the further I can push it. I'm going to have to push it from the other side. I'll put all three of them in. Them all in. All the connectors is on. The tabs bent over so that the heating elements are held in place. We'll put it together, and I'm going to connect it up before I push the unit into place to make sure that that it really does work the way it's supposed to. When I get that far, I'll bring you back. So it's about 9 o'clock on Thursday evening, and the oven is all back together again. Checked all 4 heaters, they all heat, the bottom heat, all 3 top heaters heat. So we're cooking on 380 volts. Good night. I'm going to bed. No, I'm not going to bed yet, but I'm going to... Actually, I think I'll put up that video. Maybe I'll edit that video about the espresso machine. It's short. Thanks for watching.
Well, they say the proof is in the pudding, but in this case, the proof is in the quiche that I baked this evening. The oven works fine. Heats from the top and bottom and all around the sides. And so we have a success. It's back in place. It's connected up. And we're going to be using it regularly now. Thanks for watching. Thanks for commenting and subscribing. And more soon.